people that are... Mel, weren't you tempted to join in?
Not
you could
at all.
have put your joggers
I felt
on.
like running in the opposite direction, actually.
All right, well, let's introduce Mel Stride properly, who is the Shadow Work and Pension Secretary, used to be the Work and Pension Secretary.
Yeah.
You were in the Tory leadership race.
I was.
We had a lovely chat here.
We did.
And
it wasn't enough, Camilla.
These endeavours never end well, do they? Politics never ends well. Having said that, nothing ventured, nothing gained for you.
Absolutely, yes.
Who are you backing now, then? Because you had thrown your weight behind Cleverly.
Yes.
Cleverly's crashed out. Who will Mel Stride support? Because
I have not decided.
Oh, come on, Mel.
No, I genuinely haven't.
Announce it on this
if
show.
I had,
Come on.
I would have done you the courtesy on your show of telling
you.
everybody, but I have genuinely not decided
don't you
yet,
like
so
the
I'm
look
going to
of Badenoch more than Jenrick? Because she has received some One Nation backing from Damien Green, famously Theresa May's deputy, very One Nation-y, very centrist.
Yes.
Does that then mean that she...
So Rob Jenrick's got Vicky Atkins, of course, and John Lamont and a few others. So I think there is a bit of a mix.
What's going on with these Tories? They're all over
Well, no, I think what we all recognise is that whoever wins this contest, I think they're both two strong candidates that we have in the final.
Are you happy with them both being righties? Because some people
Well,
have
what I was
thrown
going
their
to
toys
say,
out the
Camilla, what I
pram.
was going to say, Camilla, is what matters now is that whoever wins brings the party together. So that means creating a balanced shadow cabinet. That's what I would strongly advise and what I would have done had I won
with a role
the contest.
for you in it.
Well, who knows? That is beyond my pay grade now. That is beyond my pay grade. So that remains to be seen. But no, I seriously, I do think there's enormous talent across the Parliamentary Party representing all the traditions of the Conservative Party, and that needs to be reflected in the shadow cabinet. And if a leader does that, then, you know, that's a big step forward.
I mean, I appreciate they're no longer MPs, but you know, the hissy fits that people like David Gauke and Anna Soubry have rightly prompted people to ask, well, why do you care? You're basically Liberal Democrats in blue clothing. Like, this is the problem with the Tories. Will this party ever be a nest of singing birds? You've got the One Nationers complaining that there are two righties, even though the Tory grassroots wants a righty or two to be put before them. Mel, this has always been the problem with the Conservatives.
So what we've got to do is we've got to move beyond this sort of labelling of left and right. And we've got to recognise that some of the issues that people, for example, have associated with the right, like lower net migration, like clamping down on illegal migration, like lower taxation, actually are common ground issues that the whole of the party can actually agree on. So we've got to focus more on what we agree on rather than one or two of the things that are more contentious.
We'll have to get the whole shadow cabinet to agree to leaving the ECHR. Good luck with that. If you were in the shadow cabinet, would you agree to that?
Hypothetical question. So we're not at that point yet.
No, I love hypothetical.
I know you do. I know you do.
Just because. It's my job to ask these questions.
Absolutely right to ask it, and I fully expected you to do so. Look, let's see where we arrive at. Of course, we don't know who's won this contest yet. We'll have to wait and see, and then we'll have to see what happens. But I am confident that both of those candidates are perfectly capable of bringing the party together and forming an effective shadow cabinet. So that I am confident of.
Should we talk about... Jenrick's coming in shortly, and I'm going to ask him this, but what do you think about this suggestion that Jacob Rees-Mogg should be made party chairman? I mean, we love Jacob here, obviously, we're colleagues,
there we are.
But he did lose his seat in North East Somerset. Should we really be selecting a loser to be party chairman? And indeed, a non-MP?
Well, look, we lost a lot of seats that were previously safe, and we can't start on with the premise that, you know, we've got to kind of stay where we are. We've got to expect to get those seats back. So I think under more normal conditions, if I can term it that, I don't think Jacob would have lost his seat, actually.
True.
So I think going forward...
Ironically, he's sort of forced out by Reform, even though he's right-wing and a Brexiteer.
We live in very volatile political times, and Reform is now more of a force than it's been for some considerable period.
So, good idea to have Rees-Mogg as party
I think, look, strong strengths there. So a well-known figure, somebody who within the membership has a distinct following. There's no question about that. Party chairmanship, of course, is about organisation and getting the electoral machine up and fired and running and well-oiled and so on. He has a strong business background, actually.
True.
So I would say those are skills that actually are going to be quite important. So I think some real strengths there.
All right, OK, you seem to be quite supportive of that. Should we just talk about workers' rights? You're obviously, this is your brief. You've done a lot of work on worklessness. You've done a lot of work in the past when you were in government
welfare,
on benefits and
my
welfare.
brief.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
We've now got the Labour Party having tabled their workers' rights plan.
Yes.
We've got a bit of a farrago going on between the Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, and the Transport Secretary, Louise Haigh, over whether P&O are indeed rogue employers. Would you have described P&O as rogue employers in a press release?
No, and certainly not on the eve of an investment summit in which that business had at that point pledged to invest £1 billion in the UK economy. And this is a general problem. So this investment summit has been shackled by the fact that, firstly, it's come before a budget, so everybody is wondering what taxes are going to be levied on businesses, and I expect there will be a number, possibly national insurance for employers, which will be a job destroyer.
Yeah, so Rishi Sunak came up. What intel has Rishi Sunak got on this? Because he came up with this at PMQs. I put it to Jonathan Reynolds. Yes. It's fair to say he didn't rule it out.
Well, exactly, that's the point. And,
so you think they will put up employer NICs?
I think there's a risk of this. And let me say, Camilla, if they do that, if you read the Labour Party manifesto, it was very clear. It says that we will not increase national insurance. So unless you are going to argue that employer national insurance is somehow not national insurance, then they will be breaching their manifesto if they do that.
Right.
The fundamental problem was they boxed themselves in. They ruled out about broadly based taxes that raise about 75% of all the taxes raised in the UK. They told the British public that they had nothing to fear about us when it comes to rising taxes, and they're now in a position where they're going to do what they were going to do all along, but they've got a restricted number of options
Although,
now,
are you in a
many
position
of which
to
are
talk
deeply
about tax
unsatisfactory?
rises, Mel Stride?
Well, we
were
went
in government, you presided over
had
the highest taxes in peacetime.
We had COVID, we had a war in Ukraine, we had cost of living pressures, we've spent £400 billion supporting the economy and low-income households, and that inevitably, as in other countries, led to an increase in the tax burden. But we went into the general election, because of the welfare reforms that I was bringing forward, with £18 billion worth of tax cuts, focused actually on national insurance, employee national insurance.
Labour will say, but actually a 22 billion black hole.
Well, that is a fiction, and is part of their problem with the investment summit. Because if you talk the economy down, if you say that everything is doom and gloom, do not be surprised if business sentiment suffers. And what we've seen in all the so-called PMI surveys that we've had over the last 3 months is that is exactly what is happening. And in fact, if you look at the long end of the gilt market, which is about interest rates, the amount that the government has to pay to borrow when it issues bonds, that has been going up as well. Now, there are international elements to that, but undoubtedly talking down the UK economy increases the cost of borrowing to the government. So it is not the right way to proceed, and definitely not on the eve of this investment summit.
Mel Stride, thank you for braving it through joggers and runners to make it into
I
the
will
GBNews
now amble
studio.
off slowly.
Amble off, maybe put a sweatband on, take some Dextrol energy tablets and get
even
back
thinking
on the
about
round.
it is tiring me out. All right.
Thank you very much indeed to Mel Stride. As I say, I've got one of the finalists in the Tory leadership race coming into the studio next, Robert Jenrick. Mr. Jenrick, lovely to see you.
Good morning, very good to be here.
Full of beads now, you're in the final two.
No, it's very good, I'm very grateful.
So why should the membership pick you over Kemi Badenoch, who is, I think, still the favourite among the grassroots? Would you agree with that?
Look, I think it's neck and neck. If you'd asked that question 3 months ago when I was 66 to 1, then you would have said I was rank outsider.
Did you put any money on yourself at 66 to 1?
I didn't.
Shame.
No, I made that mistake. Although I don't believe in political betting.
No, I think some of your colleagues have got themselves into trouble in the past over that. But why would you be better than Badenoch?
On a serious note, I think I have the serious answers to the big challenges facing this country, whether it is on our borders, where I have a very clear policy proposal. That's let's cap legal migration in the tens of thousands and set it in stone by Parliament. Make it the law of the land. On illegal migration, let's leave the European Convention on Human Rights so that we finally end the farce of the small boats crossings.
You are absolutely speaking GB News' audience language on both of those issues, but they will rightly be cynical. They'll say to themselves, this lot have promised this before. They've promised immigration caps for time in memoriam, and in fact, immigration has only gone up. They'll also be sceptical that you'll be able to convince a big tent shadow cabinet when in office to sign up to both a cap on immigration and indeed leaving the ECHR. Mel Stride, who we just had in here, wasn't able to... I said, if you were in Jenrick's shadow cabinet, would you sign up to leaving the ECHR? Oh, well, this is all hypothetical. I don't really know. You're going to have a problem convincing One Nationers to do these things.
Well, firstly, that is why I trade in serious pods. I don't talk in platitudes, because I want to use this leadership election to settle some of these big questions, not just say there'll be a plan in months or years' time. Let's have a plan now, because the public, which is what really matters, are deeply sceptical about the Conservative Party because we failed to deliver on some of these issues in office. That's why I say not just we will bring down the numbers of coming here illegally, but we will have a cap set in law. And that's why I say we have to leave the ECHR.
No,
I do believe we can persuade...
It's hard to convince other Tories. This is a problem. We've already had, right, what I would call wets, One Nationers, throwing their toys out of the pram because it's a Jenrick versus Badenoch final. Oh, they're too right-wing. So you've now got to persuade some of these people who might be in your tent, and to be fair, both of you have got quite a curious mix of support. You've got Victoria Atkins, who would be considered a One-Nationer. Badenoch, I believe, he's not in office now, but she's got the backing of somebody like Damien Green, who's associated with Theresa May. So I get all that, but this has been the problem for successive leaders. You can't convince everyone in the party to do what you want to do, not least if you're on the right.
Well, firstly, as you say, I have got a broad range of people from Victoria Atkins, John Lamont, Ed Arger, to Lord David Frost and Bill Cash and Jacob Rees-Mogg supporting me.
We'll get onto him
so I've built a broad coalition. But where I do differ with others in this leadership contest is I think you have to use the leadership contest itself to settle some of these big issues like the ECHR. Let the members choose. Then we can have a mandate and then unite around that. Because unity doesn't just come about because you wish it so. Unity comes about because you're uniting around something. And that's what I want to do. I want a very clear, specific policies, not just on our borders, also on how we reform our NHS, how we get growth going again in our economy, a different policy on net zero, how you get homes built for young people. I've got the clear answers to the big challenges facing our country. And with that, we've got something the party can actually unite around. And the philosophy behind those things, I believe, is true, enduring, conservative values.
So you can give a guarantee here today that you will not roll back on the tens of thousands cap or indeed the departure from the ECHR if you become leader. I say that because you did vote for Remain and now you're a Eurosceptic, so people might rightly be cynical about whether you can stick to your positions.
Look, these are things I feel very deeply about. Ultimately, these are the causes that I chose to resign from Cabinet about. So your viewers know that I'm willing to take a stand on the big issues that matter to this country.
Let's be honest, let's just go back in time. Did you resign from Cabinet over this, or did you resign because you knew you weren't going to get a big job in Rishi Sunak's reshuffle? You resigned a few weeks before that reshuffle.
Afterwards.
A few weeks afterwards, after that reshuffle in the December of 2023, right? You didn't get the big job. You wanted to be Home Secretary. You gave it to James Cleverly.
No, the reason I resigned, it was a hard decision to resign. Resigning from government is not easy on a matter of principle. That's the reason why I was the only person to do it in the whole of...
It wasn't because you weren't given a Secretary of State
I resigned
job.
because I had fought relentlessly for the changes that were needed to our legal and illegal migration system, and then I wanted to do more. And so I chose not to give up, but to go into the Parliament, go onto the backbenches and to work with 60 other Conservative colleagues to fight for the change we need. And the principal one, which was obvious to me then and is clear to me now, is that you have to get out of the European Convention on Human Rights if you want to get dangerous criminals off our streets, if you want to get terror suspects out of our country, and if you want to secure our borders. And if members of the Conservative Party vote for me in this leadership election, those policies will be the Conservative Party's policies. They'll be added to the stable of our party. If we win the next general election, we will get on and do them and end this farce once and for all.
One thing I'm not really clear on is your economic policies. What are the, say, three main tenets of your approach to the economy, or what will they be?
I want to get real growth going again in the economy, by which I mean GDP per capita, helping everyone in our country to earn more, not just the overall size of the pie. And I think you do that in a number of ways. Let's get millions of people off welfare into the dignity of work. Well, I want to do what we did in the early days of the coalition with the sick note culture once more, because we've got now far too many people, for example, medicalising normal human experiences under the guise of mental health. We've got to help those people into work.
How do you get doctors to not just sign sick notes because they've only got 10-minute appointments and, frankly, doing anything else is all too difficult?
Well, we have to work with them, just as we did once before under Ian Duncan-Smith. We've got to do so again with mental health. I want to give young people real skills, not just low-value degrees. And I've said we should close the worst universities in our country turn them into hubs for apprenticeships. 1 in 4 of our young people are leaving university and earning less than if they hadn't been to university in the first place.
But do you not believe in that Blairite ambition to get as many people into university as possible?
No, I don't. Because I did, but my parents both left school at 16. My dad was an apprentice. I would not be concerned. I'd be pleased if my children chose to be apprentices.
I know, but you're in a privileged position to be able to say this because, as you have revealed before, your grandparents paid for you to go to a private school. You did really well there. Then you end up, being hugely successful. You were facilitated in that kind of upward trajectory. You're basically educated beyond your own parents' education because you had financial help. What about these kids who don't have financial help but have high aspirations and are bright enough to get to university? They should get
I want them to have all the opportunities they can access in life. But going to university is not the only way to do that. In fact, the evidence suggests the opposite. If a quarter of our young people are going to university and earning less than they hadn't gone to university in the first place, something is going badly wrong in our universities. And we need to take that on. Do for our universities what we did for our schools in the 2010s. The other big change that I want is to change our energy policy, because we have become fixated on net zero, and we're doing it on the back of working people.
So scrap net zero?
Well, I want to cut emissions, but I'm not going to do it by deindustrialising our economy. I want to pursue cheap and reliable energy. That means backing new nuclear. It means saying that gas is here to stay, even build new gas-fired power stations. Let's cut the subsidies for expensive renewables.
Kind of, ambition 2030, 2035, 2050. Do you want to just remove any arbitrary targets from a net zero?
I would go back to the Climate Change Act. I would change it so that we remove these crazy interim binding legal targets, the carbon budgets. I would certainly fight against Ed Miliband's mad plan to phase out gas by 2030. No serious person believes that's possible without doing immense harm to working people. So I have a plan to tackle our economy. I've thought deeply about this. And if I'm lucky enough to lead the party, these plans begin on the 2nd of November, not in months or years' time. A plan tomorrow is not good enough. Those
comments on net zero are reminding me of Jacob Rees-Mogg, which brings us nicely onto your suggestion that he should be party chairman. So is that how this works? He supports you, you promise him a future job?
No, not at all.
Well, you must have promised him that job. What came first, the promise of a job or the endorsement? Well,
I'd like to think it was the endorsement, because Jacob and I have known each other for a very long time.
Right.
Jacob is a good Conservative. I've always respected what he's done, trying to get advantages from Brexit, trying to change our energy policy, for example, trying to deregulate our economy. It might not be a bad idea, this, but the trouble and the membership, he cares about the party and its members.
I know, but he lost his seat. So you're basically saying that a loser should help you fight the next election.
Well, he lost his seat like hundreds of other good Conservatives did, because we failed to deliver in office. It was not because of the way he conducted himself.
Isn't there a standing MP that could lead the party in that regard, could help to be party chairman? Somebody like Priti Patel, for instance. Why can't she be party chairman? At least she won her seat.
Well, I think the members will be very pleased to hear that a true Conservative who cares passionately about the grassroots of this party...
So you've done it so that the members are favourable to this idea?
No, not at all. Although, far be it that the chair of the party is someone who the members like and respect.
I know.
That would be a shock, wouldn't it, for once? Well, let's have a chair of the party who the members actually like.
Say if he is chair of the party, will you just say to him, you start again, tear up everything that CCHQ has done wrong and start?
Yeah, I want to rebuild CCHQ from the ground up. I want to have a different way to select candidates. So we end the favoured sons and daughters of the leader being parachuted in. That was a disgrace.
Yes.
I want to stop members just getting emails asking for money, but never asking what do they want and where do they want the party to go. Let's build a mass membership, democratic organisation. I think Jacob will be a great asset to that.
OK. Robert Jenrick, we have to leave it there. I had many more questions I wanted to ask you, but time is against us. Thank you very much. Good luck in the rest of the Tory leadership race.